Good morning again. So, growing up, I went to a fairly small school, and periodically we would have school spirit days, activities, or the whole high school would get together and we'd do all sorts of random, ridiculous things. And so my grade 12 year, I'm pretty sure it was, they broke us up. We were in groups of about 8, and we were supposed to go around, and they had different team building activities that we were supposed to do. So we get to the first one, and they have it's a jump rope that's stretched, and it's probably about this high, right about there, about waist height. And so we have to get everyone from our team over the rope without touching the rope, and you're not allowed to go around it. You have to get everyone over it and to the other side. And so me and the other older guy, or tallest guy on the team, we haul everyone over the rope. It's going great, but eventually there's just me and him. Now we're like, oh, we have to get over this thing now too. And so he's like, I'm just gonna jump it. And see, he runs and he just jumps over it, clears it. Oh, shoot. Now it's all on me whether we fail this challenge or whether we win. And I'm fairly certain it was timed, and the best time won. Now, I am not the most high jump gifted person you have ever seen. And so, in my mind, I'm worried if I try to hurdle this thing, what if that end of my foot catches this rope and I just go bam and smoke my face on the ground? That would be no good. So I decided I know a way to make sure that my feet don't clip this rope. So I get back and I run and I jump like Superman over this thing. And wouldn't you know it, I make it over. I don't even touch the rope at all. It's going great. And then this moment when I'm flying through the air, I realize I have not thought about how I'm going to land. And so I reached my hands out oh, hope this goes good. And I ate the ground so fast. And the ground was a mix of grass, but there wasn't very much because it was a high traffic area. So it was a little bit of grass, mostly dirt, and some pea gravel from the nearby play structure. And so I tried to catch myself and just roll it on my face for a little bit, and I scratched the whole side of my face, and I had to go out and get all the dirt out of my face, and it was on Friday, and I had a nice, lovely scab on my face that I had to explain to everyone at church about what in the world did you do, and it was pretty embarrassing. But to anyone listening to that story, the outcome was fairly obvious, right? What did I think was going to happen? Now, my actions made perfect sense to me. I didn't want to let my team down. But to anyone else, that was the logical outcome of jumping over a rope with no plan, and you ate the ground. So, did you win? I don't know. I had to go and wash my face, so I missed half the day. I don't remember that at all. But I didn't cause our team to lose, so that's what was important. So before we jump into our passage, we're going to recap what's happened the last 2 chapters because it's important to help us understand what happens this week. So Jacob, he runs away from home, and he goes to see his uncle Laban. And then Jacob gets there. He really likes Laban's daughter, named Rachel. And so how many years does Jacob work for the right to marry Laban's daughter, Rachel? 7. Right. I teach kids all the time, and I love participation. So if I ask a question and you actually answer it, that's awesome. So works for 7 years. I'm sure he got his basic needs provided for. He got food, probably had a place to live, and that's about it. And so he works for 7 years, He marries the girl, and then he wakes up the next morning, and who did he marry? His sister, or her sister, Leah. So Jacob does get to marry Rachel, though, but what does he have to do in order to marry Rachel? Work 7 more years, so 14 years of free labor. They're not free because he gets to marry the girls, but 17 years of labor with no other source of income. So in today's money, that would be just short of $1 million that he has paid for these things. If he was just like the average worker, and from all accounts, Jacob was far better than just your average worker. Now, does anyone remember Jacob's promise that he made, or God's promise that was made to Jacob? Maybe, but let's turn to Genesis 28. And just so that we remember what it was, we're going to read verses 13 to 15 of Genesis 28. Which says, "At the top of the stairway stood the Lord. He said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I am giving it to your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and the east, to the north and the south. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you." So, where does Jacob know that he is someday going to return to? Right. Canaan, the land that eventually will become Israel. He knows he's going to get back there at some point. The land that was promised to his family. God also promises that he's going to protect him wherever he goes, and he also promises that God will be with him wherever he goes. So, after 14 years of hard labor, Jacob goes and asks Laban, "Can you send me away so that I can strike off on my own?" And Laban says no. Does anyone remember why? If you look at chapter 30, this is where it's from. Laban says no because he knows the reason why things are going so well for him, the reason why he's blessed with so much stuff, is because God is blessing Jacob. And because Jacob is working for him, he's getting blessed. So he tells Jacob, "No, you can't go, but tell me what I'll pay you, and we'll work this out." And so Jacob comes up with this weird plan where he says, "Okay, send all the spotted animals out of the flock." And so he just got a flock of spotless animals, and then he tells them, any offspring that are born that are spotted, they'll be mine, and everything else will be yours. And Laban says, "Oh, this is a great deal because spotless animals are more likely to have spotless offspring." Except that Jacob comes up with this weird plan that involves bark and trees, and all of the strongest and best offspring from these sheep and goats are spotted, and they're his, and things are going great for Jacob. Now, how are you feeling if you are one of Laban's sons? Probably not great, right? So, why wouldn't you be happy that Jacob is getting all of these animals? Because your inheritance, your herd, is getting smaller and smaller every day. So, let's turn to Genesis 31, and we are going to read verses 1 to 3, which says, "But Jacob soon learned that Laban's sons were grumbling about him. 'Jacob has robbed our father of everything. they said. "He has gained all his wealth at our father's expense." And Jacob began to notice a change in Laban's attitude towards him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your father and grandfather and to your relatives there, and I will be with you." So, right, that's exactly what we thought might happen is exactly what happened. The sons are bitter towards Jacob, and Laban seems to be heading in that same direction. But God shows up and tells Jacob it's time to move on. And what is the assurance that God gives Jacob at the end of what he tells him? "I will be with you." Now, when else have we heard God say, "I will be with you"? Right? In that previous promise in Genesis 28, God said, "I will be with you, I will protect you, you're going to have many offspring, and you're going to return to the land." So God is calling back to the promise that he gave to Jacob before. He's saying, "I will be with you," but he's also reminding, hey, remember, I said that I'm going to protect you. I said that I'm going to return you to this land. Right? I am a God who keeps his promises. Now, how are you feeling if you're Jacob? Right? Probably pretty excited. You've been slaving away for 20 years and you finally get to go back. But let's say for you in present day, if you wanted to move, who is the first person that you would need to convince that this is a good idea?
My wife.
Yeah, your spouse. Now imagine if you wanted to move away from the place that your spouse had grown up their entire life, and that's all that they had ever known. Probably going to be a little bit of a difficult task. And so that's what Jacob was facing. And so let's see how he makes out. So verses 4 to 16. "So Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the field where he was watching his flock. He said to them, 'I have noticed that your father's attitude towards me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know how hard I have worked for your father, but he has cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. But God has not allowed him to do me any harm. For if he said the speckled animals will be your wages, the whole flock began to produce speckled young. And when he changed his mind and said, striped animals will be your wages, then the whole flock produced striped young. In this way, God has taken your father's animals and given them to me. One time during the mating season, I had a dream, and I saw the male goats mating with females were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then in my dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. And I replied, yes, here I am. The angel said, look up, and you will see that only the streaked, speckled, and spotted males are mating with the females of your flock. For I have seen how Laban has treated you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, the place where you anointed the pillar of stone and made your vow to me. Now, get ready and leave this country and return to the land of your birth. Rachel and Leah responded, that's fine with us. We won't inherit any of our father's wealth anyway. He has reduced our rights to those of foreign women, and after he sold us, he wasted the money you paid him for us. All the wealth God has given you from our father legally belongs to us and our children. So go ahead and do whatever God has told you. So how would you describe Jacob's attitude as he's talking with his wives? He's actually fairly humble. He realizes that everything he has comes from God. And why does Jacob say that they have to leave? Right? Is it because, man, I am such a great worker, and because I peel bark really good off trees, and so I get what I want? Right? No. The reason that they need to go is because Jacob says, God has seen how your dad has treated me, and he says it's time to go now. Right? It's just because out of obedience to God. And so it's pretty cool that even though Jacob came up with this weird, elaborate scheme to get the young that he wanted, he realizes, you know what? That weird trick stuff, that actually wasn't the reason why I got the speckled animals or the animals that I needed. The only reason I got the animals that benefited me was because God was blessing me. That's it. It wasn't my own cleverness, not my own schemes. God is the reason why I have what I have. And are his wives on board? Absolutely. They are fully on board, right? Imagine how you would feel as a young woman if your dad made it impossible for your husband to earn a wage for the first 14 years of you knowing each other. Right? You would probably feel a little resentful towards your dad because he's not just swindling your husband. He's also harming you and making it impossible for you to earn anything. He's making life harder for you. And so, are you on board? And so they are very much on board with, yeah, let's follow God and do what he says. Because our Father, it almost sounds like he doesn't care about us at all. And so God tells them to leave. And what is the promise again that he has made? I'll be with you, I'll protect you, and I'll bring you back. Now, has God specified how they're supposed to leave? No. He hasn't told them what process to go about to do it. And so, how would you go about leaving your increasingly resentful uncle boss who doesn't want you to go, especially since you're going to be taking a lot of his best stuff with you? It seems to me like you have two choices. You could A, have a conversation with him about, hey, this is why we're leaving, and risk it going really, really bad, or B, sneak away and don't tell him, right? Those are kind of your two options that you're going with, because Jacob, he's already tried to leave once, and it didn't really go anywhere, and if he pushes the issue, there's a real chance that Laban says, you can go, but I'm taking my daughters and my grandchildren because they're not leaving, right? If he talks with them, he risks losing his family. He knows God's going to protect him, but maybe there's a little bit of doubt of, is God going to actually protect my family? So, with that in mind, let's see what option Jacob picks. Verses 12 to 22. Or sorry, not 12 to 22. 17. So Jacob put his wives and children on camels, and he drove all his livestock in front of him. He packed all his belongings he had acquired in Padan Aram and set out for the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac lived. At the time they left, Laban was some distance away, shearing his sheep. Rachel stole her father's household idols and took them with her. Jacob outwitted Laban the Aramean, for they set out secretly and never told Laban they were leaving. So Jacob took all his possessions with him and crossed the Euphrates River, heading for the hill country of Gilead. So Jacob picks the sneaky option. And he goes, he does this at sheep shearing time. So imagine right as harvest is in full swing, he decides to leave right away. Right? Everyone's super busy, they're all away. It's really easy to miss the fact that Jacob and his family are gone. And you also, when you do find out, you have to figure out, okay, can I just drop this and just let this all go to waste and risk losing a bunch of animals, or am I going to chase him down? So that's kind of why Jacob made it work like that. And he puts his family on camels, because camels are fast, so if trouble happens, at least his family can get away. Now, what did Rachel grab to take with her? Household idols. Why in the world would she do that? Right? Because we don't see her worshiping these ever. Like, what? Like, Rachel, what are you doing? You just had a conversation about how we're going to follow God who has promised us this stuff. Why are you grabbing idols on your way out? It doesn't really make much sense. And so I was confused by this, and I did a bunch of reading, and I found some stuff out that I didn't know. So there is these tablets that were found in an ancient city called Nuzi. There should be a picture that there you go. And there's a city called Nuzi that was excavated in like the 1920s, and they found something like 5,000 tablets in that city that would have existed around this time. And they talk about all sorts of random things. But one of the things that they talk about was the fact that household idols were often part of what it looked like to pass your inheritance to somebody. So if, let's say for me, if I was passing on my inheritance to my kids, I would give these household idols to Raph, because he's my oldest son, and he's the main heir to what I have. They would go to him, and they would act kind of like a deed for him. So it was proof that say, hey, this is now mine because I have these things. And so it's almost certain that, right, like what did the wives before they leave? They say everything that is our father's is legally ours, but they got cheated out of it. And so it very much seems like Rachel's motive was, I'm going to make this right. I'm going to take these things so that we can be the heir of everything that my father has, because they should belong to us anyway. Right? In her mind, she's probably just making things right on her way out. Now, is what Rachel's doing understandable? Yes. Is it right? No. Right? Just because we can see why she would do it, it still doesn't make it right. And she's also not choosing to trust the God who has provided everything for her to continue to provide for him. It's like, yeah, we'll go, but we're just going to keep this in our back pocket in case we ever need to come back. We have all this stuff. So let's see, what does Laban do when he realizes his daughters, grandkids, best worker, and idols are all gone? So verses 22 to 24. 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he gathered a group of his relatives and set out in hot pursuit. He caught up with Jacob 7 days later in the hill country of Gilead. But the previous night, God had appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream and told him, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. So Laban hears that they've left, hears his idols are gone, gets some of his men, and they hightail it after Jacob and his family. Now, what do you think Laban's mood was as he was chasing down Jacob? He was probably pretty ticked off, and he was gonna go and make Jacob pay. But God keeps his promise to Jacob and appears, and God warns Laban, basically saying, Jacob is under my protection, so you better watch yourself. Now, let's read how their interaction goes. We'll read the rest of the chapter. Laban caught up with Jacob as he was camped in the hill country of Gilead, and he set up his camp not far from Jacob's. What do you mean by deceiving me like this? Laban demanded. How dare you drag my daughters away like prisoners of war? Why did you slip away secretly? Why did you deceive me? And why didn't you say you wanted to leave? I would have given you a farewell feast with singing and music accompanied by tambourines and harps. Why didn't you let me kiss my daughters and grandchildren and tell them goodbye? You have acted very foolishly. I could destroy you, but the God of your father appeared to me last night and warned me, leave Jacob alone. I can understand your feeling that you must go and your intense longing for your father's home. But why have you stolen my gods? I rushed away because I was afraid, Jacob answered. I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But as for your gods, see if you can find them, and let the person who has taken them die. And if you find anything else that belongs to you, identify it before all these relatives of ours, and I will give it back. But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the household idols. Laban went first into Jacob's tent to search there, then went into Leah's, and then the tent of the 2 servant wives, but he found nothing. Finally, he went into Rachel's tent, but Rachel had taken the idols and hidden them in her camel's saddle, and now she was sitting on them. When Laban had thoroughly searched her tent without finding them, she said to her father, please, sir, forgive me if I don't get up for you. I am having my monthly period. So Laban continued his search, but he could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became very angry and challenged Laban. What's my crime? He demanded. What have I done wrong to make you chase after me as though I were a criminal? You have rummaged through everything I own. Now, show me what you have found that belongs to you. Set it out here in front of us before our relatives for all to see. Let them judge between us. For 20 years I have been with you, caring for your flocks. In all that time, your sheep and your goats never miscarried, and all those years I never used a single ram of yours for food. If any were attacked and killed by wild animals, I never showed you the carcass and asked you to reduce the count of your flock. No, I took the loss myself. You made me pay for every stolen animal, whether it was taken in broad daylight or in the dark of night. I worked for you through the scorching heat of the day and through cold and sleepless nights. Yes, for 20 years I slaved in your house. I worked for 14 years, earning 2 daughters, and then 6 more years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. In fact, if the God of my father had not been on my side, the God of Abraham and the fearsome God of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen your abuse and my hard work. That is why he appeared to you last night and rebuked you. Then Laban replied to Jacob, these women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. In fact, everything you see is mine. But what can I do now about my daughters and their children? So, come, let's make a covenant, you and I, and it will be a witness to our commitment. So Jacob took a stone and set up as a monument. Then he told his family members, gather some stones, and they gathered stones and piled them up in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the pile of stones to eat a covenant meal. To commemorate the event, Laban called the place Jegar Shahadutha, which means witness pile in Aramaic, and Jacob called it Gilead, which means witness pile in Hebrew. Then Laban declared, this pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant that we made today. This explains why it is called Gilead, witness pile. But it also called Mizpah, which means watchtower. For Laban said, may the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you marry other wives, God will see it, even if no one else does. He is a witness to this covenant between us. See this pile of stones, Laban continued, and see this monument I have set between us? They stand between us as a witness of our vows. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones or this monument to harm me. I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor, to serve as a judge between us. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Laban got up early the next morning. He kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then they left and returned home. So, that was a pretty long section. And as I read that, I couldn't help but think, what did you think was going to happen? Right? Laban, what did you think was going to happen when you treated your son-in-law as your own personal money-making machine for 20 years? And Jacob, what did you think would happen when you disrespected your father-in-law by sneaking away without telling him? And Rachel, what did you think was going to happen when you stole those household gods? Right? This was always going to lead to a massive fight, right? With words. But it didn't have to. Right? Jacob knew that he should talk to Laban before he left. But he told himself this story, right, of how Laban was going to react if he did. Right? If I tell Laban, he's going to steal my family, and that'll be it. And so because of that story that he tells himself, he decides running away from it and avoiding the conflict is what will be best, what will ensure a good outcome. Now, do you think that Laban would have actually reacted the way he said he was going to? Probably not, right? We don't know for sure, but I imagine that Laban would have probably acted pretty similarly. He doesn't seem like this great and kind-hearted person. And so he probably would have reacted fairly poorly. But at least Jacob could have left with his head held high, knowing that Laban didn't actually have a single valid reason to be upset or angry with him. Jacob could have said, I worked my tail for 20 years. God is letting me leave, or telling me to leave. Please let me go with your blessing, but I'm going to leave anyway because I must obey God. But I want to honor you as well. Right? Jacob didn't have to give Laban any reason to be upset. I know that when I'm in conflict with somebody, it's very easy to try and justify my actions that I know would normally not be right, yet because of this specific situation, it's probably fine. Right, for example, in marriage, sometimes you feel like your spouse is being inconsiderate, unloving, and you can fill in a couple other things. And you feel like there's no point in talking about this, it's just going to end up in a big argument, so you do things like get passive-aggressive, or yell, or do things that you know will make them mad, or whatever else you know that's probably not really right, but I kind of want to do it anyway. Or maybe your kid is being difficult and getting on your nerves, and so you decide to snap. And you tell yourself, well, I needed to get their attention somehow, even though you just wanted to do that. That was probably not what was right. Or maybe at work you have a boss who's a real pain in the butt and who just constantly berates you for every mistake that you do. And so you choose to start, I'm just not going to tell him when I do things wrong. I'm just going to hide it and hope no one ever sees because I don't want to deal with this anymore. We do this a lot when we feel like somebody has wronged us and we use it as justification. Well, I can do this because it's not nearly as bad. They've kind of earned it by acting like this. There is no such thing as just a small kind of wrong. All right, even if everyone else is sinning against you, you have a choice. Are you going to honor God and do what's right, or are you going to sin too? Because a sin, even an understandable sin, is wrong. And just like it does for Jacob, it reveals in us a lack of trust in God. Right? Why did Jacob run from Laban? Because he was scared that he was going to take away his daughters. God had promised Jacob that he would be with him and protect him, and that he would bring him to the land. And Jacob doubted that God's protection would mean also protection for his wife and his kids. And so he made his own plans and wanted to make things right the way he thought they would be. Right? Jacob didn't trust that God was actually going to be good in this situation. Jacob and Rachel, for that matter, decided, my plans are better in this situation. Right? They felt like, I am going to manipulate my circumstance to get what I want, because I don't think that God will give us good things. How many of you are familiar with the Great Commission? Hopefully most of us. What are some things that God tells us in the Great Commission? Right. All power belongs to Jesus. Tell the whole world about him. Teach them to obey Jesus. Baptize them. And then what does he end with? I am with you always, even to the end of the age. God hasn't promised us that he's going to protect us like Jacob, but God, just like Jacob, has promised those who believe in him that he will be with you wherever you go. The same promise that should have given Jacob confidence to do what was right also is given to us. And when I know that Jesus is with me, my self-justified retaliation all of a sudden doesn't seem quite so justified anymore. Or when I remember how often I sin against God, and yet he still forgives me, it doesn't seem like I can do that. When I remember how Jesus has dealt with those who wronged him at the cross, when I remember how Jesus trusted his Father's will, it seems pretty ridiculous for me to go, God, I know that you're with me, and so I'm going to do this thing that I know is probably wrong. Right? God is with me. He loves me. He always does what's best. So why wouldn't I trust him to be with me even in hard situations and in hard conflicts? And you know what? Your conflict resolution may not go well, but we have the opportunity to show others the same kindness that God shows us every day. There is a temptation for us to look out for our own interests, but if we act like that, we shouldn't be surprised when we get into situations like Jacob, right? When we see something or when we feel like we need to address something, but we're like, I'm just going to not do that. We shouldn't be surprised if we're in a big blow up and people are angry, because what did you think was going to happen? Right? Just like Jacob. Instead, though, we must keep our eyes on Jesus, the one who is with us always, and trust that he will be with us even as we go to address some hard things. Don't do the understandable sin to protect yourself. Do what's right and trust the God of the universe is going to be with you as you do it. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you are good, and I thank you so much that you have promised us that you will always be with us. God, there is lots of hard and messy things that happen in our lives. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to deal with it better than Jacob did. I pray that you would help us to actively trust you, that we would look to you in the midst of it, and that we would see your goodness and faithfulness through. God, help us to trust you even when it's hard. Amen.